Welcome to Speaking from Experience from the team at Cortico-X. Cortico-X is an experience-led transformation firm that helps companies unlock growth by aligning strategy, technology, and human-centric design. We are experience activists, grounded in the belief that what's best for people is what's best for the organization. Hi, I'm Len Devanna. In this series, I sit down with leaders who have done more than talk about experience. They've built it, they've led it, and they've learned from it. If you like what you hear today, please follow the show, leave a review, and check out the show notes to learn more about Cortico-X. Let's start the show. Our guest today brings a rare combination of cross-industry experience and operational leadership. Jeff Marx has led transformation at scale across telecom, big tech, and insurance, currently as the Chief Operating Officer at Munich Re Specialty Insurance in North America. Jeff is a business transformation leader known for turning strategy into execution. With deep expertise in process reengineering, performance management, and team building, he focuses on creating simple, scalable practices that drive sustainable growth, customer loyalty, and long-term business value. Also joining us today is Sujay Saha, CEO of Cortico-X and a longtime friend of the show. Jeff and Sujay, thanks so much for joining us today. Let's get right into it. We have a lot to cover. Jeff, let's start with you. Your professional journey is pretty unique. You've worked across industries from telecoms to big tech to security before entering insurance. Maybe just start by telling us a bit about your professional journey and how it's shaped your perspective on transformation and leadership.
Yeah, right off the bat, I'm absolutely not your typical insurance executive. Most people get into this kind of spot with 20, 25 years of insurance background, doing it for either carriers, MGAs, people from that perspective. I've got about maybe 10 total years of P&C insurance experience, but I've got, as you noted, a lot of experience in other industries, other places. A- And when I think about, the types of experiences that I've had, I also think about the fact that not just industries, but different roles, different jobs. I worked in learning and development for quite some time. I've done frontline operations. I did a stint for a while doing international business development, working with companies from different countries, trying to figure out how we might work together to launch, exciting new cool stuff. Yeah, I've been privileged to work, and live in different parts of the world. Lived in the Philippines for a period of time. I was working for IBM at that point, large amount of work, big operation stuff. But I've worked in multiple countries across Asia, South America, even, different places within the US, Canada and others. And so, pretty privileged when I think about that the opportunities that I've had. And so when I think about what that's meant to me on my leadership journey, my transformation journey, I can think back to and pull different things from different times, different places in my life. Um, you can't help but really learn servant leadership when you spend time in cultures where that is their actual culture. It is very different than a US kind of a culture. When you go live in the Philippines, spend time in many of your Asian countries, servant leadership is demonstrated every day and in every part of every industry that's there. And so you begin to pick that up. You begin to see what works and why. You begin to value it differently, maybe because you were lucky enough to spend time there. And so that certainly has shaped part of my thought process there. Um, and again, other opportunities that I've had, if I think about the fact that I've worked in different industries and seen what I like to call different ball games played different ways, I've failed a lot. And because I've failed at different opportunities or at different times, I've had opportunities to learn when I do succeed, why I succeed. And as long as you can take a look backwards and be self-reflective. So I think that's a lot of what's helped shape me there, both from a leadership perspective, but also how I think about transformation.
There's a lot that, thank you for sharing. There's a lot to unpack there. That notion of not having a fear of failure, but rather seeing failure as something that helps propel you forward. I often say I've never made any bad decisions. Every decision I've made has made me smarter and prepared me better for tomorrow. As you think about that, the industry experience and the international experience, is there a common thread that you think about that sort of spans, that is universal across the globe?
Well, there's no question that industries and businesses all face the same types of problems, right? Um, but if I really boil it down to what is core to every business, every industry, every capability that you think about, everything comes back to people. business is people-centric. Whether it's I'm out there doing international business development and trying to get someone else to think about my ideas and how they might invest in a different strategy or those types of things, or whether it's an operational capability where you're working with people to be more efficient, be more effective, be quicker, respond quicker to client needs, client expectations, et cetera, it still comes down to people. And if we, one of the things I like to talk about is every project is a people-based project, and we should start all of our thought process from that, and then worry about how we get to where we want to get to after we've thought about people first.
Jeff, that is the most exciting part that got me attracted to kind of spending some more time with you, because you not only have like a very unique background, but you bring in a very unique perspective of looking at every opportunity through the lenses of people. And that's reflective a lot of times, like the projects that you run, but then I also see that inspiration going on the floors where people are thinking about aspects of change management, aspects of human design, human-centered design, before you actually get into really driving some of that. So that's exciting. Do you see, Jeff, if I may ask like a quick follow-up around this, do you see and struggle with how to scale that mindset or discipline without people organically building? You said early on that you're so privileged to have actually gone and seen so much of this firsthand, that you have become naturally a person who propagates this. But how about others who have not had that kind of a privilege, and what can they do, and how do you scale some of these capabilities?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's hard. And I would suggest that no, it's not ingrained in most companies to think about things as a people first approach. And many very successful leaders don't think that way, or haven't had the opportunity maybe to reshape their mind to think that way, right? If we think about what businesses do, right? We make money, we deliver products, we build things out there, and the most successful have a very strong vision about what they want to build, how they want to build it, and frankly, why it's important for either consumers, businesses, or others to have whatever they happen to be building. It gets done through people. And these most successful organizations early on are probably so product focused. They're so focused on crossing that chasm, if you will, of having a product that actually meets a market fit, has a need. But then to scale that business, to really grow it successfully, you now have to meet the needs, not just of the customer that you're serving, but the team members that are helping to serve it and all of those types of things along the way. And so, no, I don't think it's easy. I would say it's a big challenge. I would say it's probably one of the biggest challenges that will, over the course of the coming years, between technology advances and the difference in how young people think about value in the workplace versus how people more my age and with gray hair like mine thinks about value in the workplace, right? And so we have to make that shift. And there probably are ways that I can think about to do it, and there's ways that I haven't thought about that you guys probably have as well.
Let me stay here for a second. Suji, I'm going to throw it back to you. Your rally cry is what's best for people is what's best for the organization. And that is a great summarization of what we're touching on here. Suji, could you put a little bit more skin on that, a little bit more meat on that bone for us?
Absolutely. Uh, the biggest punch that I would say to this is purpose and profit can go together. What Jeff just said nailed it around organizations getting too product focused and thinking about, if I create the best product possible, or the best product in my eyes and minds that I create, people are just going to come to it. Oftentimes, these businesses are not wrong in the beginning, because there is sometimes like that attractiveness, and then you may have created an arbitrage in your business because of which you get there, but that's not sustainable. I think if you are really trying to create a sustainable business over a period of time, it's extremely important to kind of look at it through the lenses of people. And that's true. That's been true forever in the past. And I would say that that's going to stay true even in the future, even as AI comes in and takes over a lot of different types of work that humans would have probably not been able to do as well as AI would. I think there is still a huge opportunity around organizations going after that. So purpose and profit, if you really want to drive like a sustainable future, in my opinion, kind of goes there.
I worry for the day where AI agents can make a good podcast host, but we're not there quite yet. Jeff, let's jump back to you. So, as noted in our intro, you are the COO at Munich Re Specialty Insurance in North America, and given that role, you've got a front row seat to how the business operates. Maybe just to take a minute and tell us about the business unit and how it fits within the broader global Munich Re organization.
Yeah, sure. So for many people may not know who Munich Re actually is. So let me start there for a second. Munich Re is one of, if not the largest reinsurer in the world. And we probably go like this every once in a while with someone else. But we are quite large from that perspective. Based out of Munich, Germany, we have businesses that operate globally. We have offices, we have operations, all of that type of stuff, et cetera, literally everywhere across the globe. Munich Re Specialty is a unit within the Munich Re family. It actually reports into a broader group called Global Specialty Insurance, or we call it GSI. And then I work specifically for Munich Re Specialty North America, where we're focused on the North American specific risks that we as an insurance company would write. Now, I noted that earlier, Munich Re is a reinsurance company. GSI, or Munich Re Specialty, and Munich Re Specialty North America is in fact an insurance company. We write primary insurance, excess insurance, et cetera. And we specifically are focused in the commercial and property and casualty space.
So, to drill in a little bit deeper into, thank you for that overview. We know from past conversations that your organization celebrates the banner of "We enable excellence," and I love that. It really aligns to what we're talking about here today. Maybe you can take a minute and just unpack for us, what does that mean in practice? How does that translate into tangible benefits for the customer? And perhaps most importantly, how do you measure that?
Yeah, this is actually part of something that I get super excited about when we talk about we enable excellence, or we talk about vision statements, mantras, all of those types of things. So I took over as the COO formally about a year and a half ago, informally, almost not quite 2 full years yet. And one of the things that when I sat down with our leadership team that had some changes, as often happens when leaders come in, um, sat down with our leadership team, and we started just a philosophical discussion about what does an operations team do? What are we here for? What's the intent of our organization? It's easy to get straight to the work and start running projects and programs and all that other stuff, but taking a step back to really think about, what is our role within an organization? And what became true for us, I can't speak every operations organization, but what became true for us was this idea that at the end of the day, we actually enable the strategy on behalf of the business. We have to build the capabilities necessary. We are one of the largest in terms of team size, et cetera. So we have to execute on behalf of the business, et cetera. And if we think about what an insurance company does, it's excellent at underwriting, and they're excellent at claims. And there's some other things that they have to be excellent at for sure, finance and those types of things. But those are two core promises that we have to be excellent at. And so actually, it was one of my team members, as we were working through this philosophy a bit around, who are we and who do we want to be, kind of a conversation that said, if we are the ones who execute the strategy, build upon it, or allow the business to execute that strategy, then what we're doing is enabling excellence. And so we kind of tied those three words together. We built an entire vision statement around who we are and what we do and why. And then we built a mantra. So to your second question, how does that come alive, and how do you measure it, right? Because if you don't make it come alive, it's just words on a page. Lots of companies end up there, not fun. And if you don't measure it, it can't come alive. And so there are four key pillars that we've identified, at least at this stage in our maturity, because no one knows where we're going to be 5 years from now. Four key pillars that we wrap it around. The first is a commitment to quality. We look to hold ourselves to the highest standards of quality in everything we do. And in that statement, is the ability for us to challenge ourselves and for others to challenge when we're not. So that becomes important to recognize. The second pillar is a culture of continuous improvement. We recognize that excellence isn't achieved overnight. It's not quick. And in fact, we like to use the words, we're on an imperfect journey. That's the journey itself is probably much more important than the end state, because by the time you get most of the way, we probably change what the end state looks like anyway. And so recognizing that it's imperfect and we're constantly looking to improve. Status quo is not your friend, never has been. The third pillar is around empowerment and accountability. And we believe that we're better when people are empowered to take ownership of their own work. We do not want to build a command and control type of environment. We want a trust and verify type of environment. And then we expect people to be accountable for their own work. And so we ask each other regularly. We said we were going to do X. Did we do it? And at what quality did we deliver it? And the fourth is probably something that we could talk a lot of time around, because I think organizations get into this trap. I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's focus on outcomes. We believe that focusing on outcomes, not output, is critical for sustainable success and meaningful progress in anything that we do. When team members focus on the impact of their decisions or of the work that they do, the outcomes, if you will, rather than the tasks required to get that work done, the team members want to engage. The team members feel fulfilled, and they recognize the value they're bringing, not just to the organization in terms of profit or other things, but to the team and to themselves as they go through it.
So a lot to unpack there. I wanted to go down the COO role. Suj, do you have anything you want to explore before I take us a little further? Because I know there's a lot there that's, I'm sure, triggering you as well.
No, absolutely. All across the board. I would say I do want to connect it back, Jeff. You mentioned early on about servant leadership and your personal style of that. Could you help me in connecting? How do you leverage that leadership style in this scenario to kind of run a company by driving this kind of an excellence path that you're talking about? Because you have a lot to do, and considering your responsibilities of running a company to kind of run multiple companies and propagate that sort of behavior across the board. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, a number of years back, I had the privilege of attending a session where we talked a little bit about the future of leadership. And one of the things that really struck with me was most of us get promoted because we're good at something we do. Most of us get promoted at some point because someone recognized some potential in us, from that perspective, et cetera. But each time that happens, each time you take on more responsibility, you become essentially you become a force multiplier. And in this session, we talked a little bit about the difference between how you got promoted and who you need to become. And if you really thought about that, you got promoted because 80% of your time you spent doing a great job doing something specific. As you shift into leadership, and this is how I think about servant leadership, you have to shift to leading and less doing. Your job now is to help other people be successful. Your job is to work for them, not that they work for you. And I spend a pretty significant amount of time thinking about how am I enabling my team? How am I letting them succeed or fail? How am I helping them learn when we fail, that we move past that, et cetera? And that's the critical component there from my view of servant leadership is I work for them. They don't really work for me from that perspective.
You make me, it's a bold statement, but oftentimes, more often than not, a failure of an individual is a failure of leadership. We don't look at it that way.
Yeah. Every leader has some responsibility for every failure. Full stop. There's no question about that. And you're not wrong. Oftentimes we fail to look in the mirror and realize that.
Let's talk about the operations side a bit. You are, and I mean this as a compliment, you're sort of unique in your tone and approach from my experience with operational leaders. Oftentimes they're looking for efficiencies and cost cutting. Yet you're looking at this through a completely different lens. You've got customer satisfaction on your radar. You've got the individual and outcomes on your radar. What is the key to ensuring operational excellence, and ensuring that any tactics within operational efficiencies complement?
It's a great question. And I'm going to start off by saying I too also need to ensure that we take a look at cost implications and optimization of process and those types of things. Every business leader has to, regardless of role, frankly. Um, that being said, I think there are a couple of keys to ensure that when you are looking at process optimization, that you also ensure you're caring for the more important pieces, which are the two core people, right? The customer and then your internal team sets. And so, first is everything we do has to start with a conversation around what are the business outcomes we're trying to achieve and why. Why are we doing X? Why are we building, looking to optimize something? Why are we looking to change how we do something? I rarely see optimization as just a pure efficiency play. In fact, I think that's a mistake. Usually it's about enabling better decisions or outcomes for both the company and the customer or the client. If we can focus on those outcomes, really articulate them up front, what are we expecting to achieve for the customer, for the client, that makes us better and makes their life better? And that's where you start the project from. And every opportunity you reiterate, these are the goals. You will find opportunities to both optimize, cut some costs, or do things faster, cheaper as the case may be. But the better part of the better, faster, cheaper is your bigger focus. The second area, and we've touched on this a little bit, but it's critical, is change management. Change isn't simply, it's hard to manage, right? And people are wired differently. In most organizations that I've been a part of, you have some early adopters that want to be part of every program that drives change. These are usually your transformation people to begin with. But even, we can always find these early adopters, people that want tomorrow to be different than today was. But you also have the opposite end of the spectrum. I call them laggards. I'm not sure that's a good word, but they're slower to adopt change. They're almost afraid, frankly, of change. And if you start the project by asking yourselves who is in which buckets, as we start to think through how we go about doing this after you've identified the core benefits, customer and business benefits, then who do we need? Who's this going to actually impact? And where do they sit on that spectrum? You can start a dialogue about when you bring each people in, the different groups in, who do you need to be a champion? How do you find a champion in the people that are slower to adopt versus just the people that are quick to adopt? And then you can manage that change along the entire spectrum of the project. More often than not, and plenty of times I've failed at this, to be honest. More often than not, we think of change management at the end of the project when we're ready to implement. And we go, okay, now who do we impact? Now I got to go teach people how to do something differently than we did before. Whereas if you bring them along the journey and you find ways to engage them effectively through the entire journey, not just through the implementation phase, you have a much stronger opportunity to be successful.
Absolutely. In fact, a quick follow up there, Jeff. This made me wonder, what are the most significant levers, in your opinion, that the companies can really pull to improve retention through this operational excellence?
When I think about retention, I think about it with two most critical groups, your customer group as well as your employee group. And oftentimes, fortunately or unfortunately, they go hand in hand. You either keep both a lot or you lose both a lot, right? And so one way is to think about how you improve retention of both is to try to bring the noise around retention down to one KPI or one thing that you can measure, you can think about through the project, through any, program of work, et cetera. And I try to think about it as how simple is it for people to do business with us? And so from a customer perspective, the simpler you make it, the more likely they are to stay. It's hard. Think about telecom. Think about your cell phone provider. It's hard to change cell phone providers, intentionally so, probably, right? Companies make it a barrier for you to want to leave them to go somewhere else. So it's difficult. And so if it's easy to do business, if you feel like the price is fair, if you feel like customer service when I need it is good, but I need it rarely, if you feel like the core capability or that it's easy to do business with that company, then the barrier to leave is high because you're not going to drive yourself to go to go jump, as the case may be. It's also true internally. And unfortunately, we don't always do a great job of this. Companies don't always do a great job of this. And it's because oftentimes what we build for our team members doesn't look at all like what we build for our consumers, or act at all like we do for our consumers. It's starting to change, and I think it needs to. Um, because easier we can make it for people to do their jobs, the more satisfied they are. The simpler it is for people to feel like things are fair, they're treated fair. They feel like they're heard. The business itself is transparent to them. All of those types of things, etc. The simpler we can make that for people, the bigger the barrier is to leave. That's the key thing that I like to think about when I think about how do we retain customers and employees.
It goes back. It goes right back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. What's best for the individual is oftentimes what's best for the organization. So many companies over calibrate, my opinion, to the customer side, and the employees are yesterday's news. When just reinforcing your point, in my experience, happy employees yield happy customers, yield happy business. It's really that straightforward.
Uh, ESAT equals CSAT. A lot of people say in different industries, employee satisfaction equals customer satisfaction. I'm not always sure that that's the safest way to measure, the best way to measure it. The simplest way, from my perspective, and I'll just reiterate, the simpler you can make it for both the customer and the employee, the bigger the barrier is to leave.
Gentlemen, let's talk technology a little bit because we have so much to cover. I could do this all day. We could do this all day. Let's talk about technologies through the lens of customer experience. Jeff, you've had your hand in technology in various ways over the years. You've done a lot in robots, process automation, API development. What emerging technologies do you see as having the biggest impact on on customer experience in the insurance sector over the next several years?
So this will be true of any industry, any company, period, full stop. The advent of generative AI and the speed at which it's now changing and becoming adoptive, or just AI in general, it's so fast. We've never seen this kind of technology change at the pace that we're seeing it today. And this will impact every industry in every way. So I think about how might it get leveraged, right? High volume, low complex activities are going to get replaced by AI. There's no question about that. And you could look at that as a pure expense play, and great, now I can go, do some things there differently, et cetera. Or you can look at that as an opportunity to upskill your team and move them to higher value work, move them upstream into the value of the work that's being done. And that will allow you to think more broadly about how you grow your company instead of how you maintain your company. AI should be an enabler for growth. AI should be an enabler for team development, individual development, all of those types of things. We're just seeing it every day. You can tee up decisions to people faster because you pull data together that previously had to be done by a person to try to pull it all together. Now a machine can pull it together and tee it right up in front of somebody. So I would expect, AI as a whole to be the single biggest disruptor that we would expect to see, not just in the insurance industry, but across the board.
And let's go a little bit deeper there. You touched on it. What do you see the biggest opportunities for AI to enhance versus replace the human side of customer experience?
Sure. So it's exciting, by the way. This is an exciting question because if I thought about the decisions people have to make on a regular basis, in insurance space, we get a risk comes to an underwriter. The underwriter has to evaluate that risk, spend a fair amount of time to be able to say, yes, I want this under these parameters, or no, I don't, as the case may be. If you, in most of our worlds, the data comes in unstructured. Somebody has to structure it to get it, into the right way for the underwriter to then make those decisions. at some point in the future, and every insurance company is looking at it, how do I take that unstructured data and now leverage this AI capability, and then even a step further to pull in data that wasn't part of that original submission that now exists out there in the Ethernet, right? And be able to pull that in and structure it in a way that allows an underwriter to almost to at least focus their decisioning. Here's what looks good, here's what looks bad, and within the bad, because sometimes we write bad stuff, sometimes we write risky risks, we have to, everybody should to some extent. Even what's in those, what might be bad about a specific risk, getting focused on those specific elements. And so you can start to ask yourself, how do I write this? Instead of trying to get to all the data to say, can I write this? So that's a big shift, right? The underwriter being able to focus on the decisions that they have to make because the data is presented to them in a way that helps them make that decision quicker and frankly better. But that's just an underwriter. Like I said, every single industry is going to be that way, where AI is going to allow people in frontline positions to be better enabled to make decisions quicker and probably make decisions for customers in some cases as well.
There's a perspective, Jeff, that has been building up in my mind. I wanted to pick your brain on this. What what one of the things that humans have, and a lot of times we believed, at least I believed 24 months back, that empathy is something which humans will have and the machines will likely not be able to have, because you and part of the reason why you will need humans at all times. With the advancements of AI and the way AI is getting into understanding what needs to be done, where do you see empathy potentially coming into picture when you are thinking about, should a human do this work or should a machine do this work?
It's a great question. And I would challenge that many AI experts would suggest that they can build empathy into the AI engines themselves. Now, it's only as good as a programmer can program it. Let's be clear on that, right? But empathy is a human emotion. It's not a specific reaction to a data element. It's a reaction to something emotional that someone else has portrayed in all likelihood. You feel with someone is the concept of empathy, right? And so my suggestion is when the human interaction is critical, when there's something from someone on the other side of a screen, the other side of a room, the other side of, however you're interacting with that person, the empathy requirement is there. And you're going to have to decide, am I comfortable enough that the machine can do it well? Or do I need people with that skill set? Emotional intelligence becomes a critical skill set in the future. It is now already, let's be clear, but even more so when so much of the work is automated, because parsing out the need to react with emotion, the need to react with empathy or other types of emotions, et cetera, becomes the critical decision point. The machine's not. You could tell the machine to reply in an empathetic tone. What it's not going to be able to do in real time is to understand if it needs to shift its tone.
That is a great point. And if I may follow up here, it's this interesting times that we are living in, right? 6 months back, I would have just completely vigorously nodded my head along the lines of what you just said. Right now, there is a part of me which wants to bring in a contrarian view a little bit more forcefully out there, that I feel machines, the generative AI in particular, and I would say like even agentic AI now that we are seeing, because agentic AI will be focused on the ultimate outcomes that we are trying to get to, and we know that the ultimate outcomes can be in many of the aspects of the businesses can be achieved through empathy. I personally feel like I want to put some money behind on this, that the machines will start to become more empathetic. In fact, I want to almost push this philosophy of infinite empathy that you can actually teach to the machines that the humans will now have to fight against and see like, hey, how do they make sure that they're leveraging that empathy to the business advantage? This is just to put out there, Jeff. Like, I and I don't have like a ton of examples of this except for like a couple that I can theoretically talk about, but would love to see where things go.
There's a couple real examples where people are trying it. No question, right? Call center industry. If you have to call into a call center to get support for something, et cetera, one of the things, and they've been working at this for quite a while, one of the things that we've learned machines can do is they can measure tone of voice. They can measure escalation of voice. They can measure all of the things that would cause a human to want to react differently because the approach that the person has taken has changed, or maybe it started off really bad, and you just recognize very quickly that there is a requirement for an empathetic response. Do I believe that today? I have not witnessed today the machines being able to adjust effectively from that. Do I think someday they will be able to? I agree with you. I'd be shocked if we don't continue to go down that path. We know they can now think for themselves. Why couldn't they begin to think about how they react as well for themselves in the future? So probably not wrong. I I like to think that that also means, or I hate to think that that also means they could change leadership. They could start to replace leadership.
Actually, very interestingly, Jeff, that is something what you just said about the leadership part. I do think about that. Sorry, I may digress us here, and Len, tell me if it's too much of a digression here. But it's very interesting on how leadership itself could change so much of its definition in many ways. People who may have traditionally just delegated jobs to getting stuff done through outcomes may actually start to change quite a bit because now leaders would have to do a lot of things like on their own and become that tech savvy, right? So it's very interesting. But anyway, let's stay focused on what we are talking here. But you get me excited here, Jeff.
Wow, you're both shattering my delusions today, and it's a rough pill to swallow because every day ChatGPT tells me I'm brilliant, I'm handsome. No, it's never seen better ideas, and I think what I'm hearing is that's all programmed in and not authentic. I'll process that on my own. Let me ask you both this question, gentlemen, and we'll move on because we are running lots to cover. We're talking a lot about change management. We're talking a lot about new technologies. We're talking a lot about digital transformation. We're talking about the needs of the customer. I'll throw it out to both of you. Is there a thing that you've seen in your respective journeys that companies tend to get wrong when trying to improve customer experience through technology?
One of the things that I have seen and in the industry is a lot of times we start with the right problem statement. But then when we quickly get to step number two, we skip a few steps right after and we get excited about the shiny objects, the aspects of the features of the technologies that feel so promising that you start to skip in the constraints of the budget that Jeff talked about. And you start to think about like less about human centered design, less about change. And then you start to skip some of those things because with all good intentions, because you think that, hey, it's easy enough. And you start to almost undercalibrate the amount of change that is needed to drive that technology to kind of serve the outcomes that you initially planned. I feel like that is one of the biggest pitfalls that we have seen, in my opinion, in the past, and I continue to see it even in today's world, in the AI world, like where organizations are thinking about use cases and opportunities, and then jumping in directly to kind of do POCs and then implementing solutions, versus thinking about, hey, what does this mean in terms of like the change? Will am I ready for driving that kind of a change in parallel?
It's a really good point. I think oftentimes when I see failure, and I've done this myself, right? is when I jump to the solution before I've defined the problem around transformation. And what that ends up being, it can look like somebody saying, "I need AI to do this." Well, did you really understand what you need to achieve before you decided AI was the right tool? Or you went to a technology, conference, and you saw three different things, and now you've already decided one of them you need, and you haven't really identified the problem you're trying to solve. So you start forcing square pegs into round holes, right? In the design thinking process, if you really spend, 70% of your total time defining that problem and getting to the core changes that you would, that if you change would drive success, the solutions become apparent. And unfortunately, we jump straight to the solutions too fast. I even think oftentimes about when we know something didn't go the way you expected, right? What's the first thing that most companies say? I got to go train my people. Training might not be the problem. It might be, but it might not be the problem. So taking a step back during the process and really ensuring you understand the 3, 4, whatever number of core problems you need to solve in order to be better, and then focusing your effort there around your solution instead of predefining the solution.
I'll add a bit to that, and I suspect you'll both agree. One of the things that I've learned is it's very easy to get to in your own head, a predefined end state or a North Star. Very, very easy. And it's very easy to start executing in that path. But a lesson I had to learn early on was it is equally as important to bring everyone around you along for the ride, because we are smarter together. And when everyone starts contributing, when everyone aligns around that end state, they may make that end state better. They may help improve how you get there, but ultimately we rally as one versus rallying as, "Hey, here's what we're going to go do. Everyone get behind me and let's go."
Len, that's a really big call out because oftentimes we do things to people, not with people. And we're going to be much more successful the more often we do it with people instead of to them.
Gentlemen, let me ask you one last question here on the topic of change. Do you what's your philosophy on creating a culture that embraces innovation and change?
Yeah, it starts by defining it. I take a step back. If I thought about a year ago when we started or year and a half when we started this conversation around, the operations vision, the we enable excellence, all of those types of things, et cetera. One of the core statements is culture of continuous improvement. And we, on a regular basis, when my operations leadership team gets together offsites or even onsite, but for big meetings, not your hour-long meeting, et cetera, but your larger strategic meetings, one of the things that we do is we take those 4 pillars I spoke about at the end, and we measure ourselves against them. How committed to quality were we? Did we actually empower and drive accountability to ourselves during these meetings around the topics? Was it deep? Did we feel like there was value? And then that culture of continuous improvement. And we score ourselves openly on it. We use 1 to 4. People might use whatever they want from a scale. And then we talk about the outliers. And the purpose of discussing the outliers isn't to change the numbers or any of that kind of stuff. It's because people are going to have various opinions and views. And over time, the team begins to understand what they think good looks like for a culture of continuous improvement, what good looks like for each of those core values. And the more we can then take that deeper into the organization, that thought process, then the more likely you are to build a common culture of continuous improvement, a common culture of commitment to quality, et cetera.
Everyone is rowing together. They are rowing as one. Yeah.
You try.
You try.
Yep.
Sujay, friend, anything to add?
No, I think Jeff covered it pretty well. I I would just amplify the point around how thinking upfront and understanding the stakeholders, um, and understanding who is going to get impacted, who is going to create this impact. How do we inspire and motivate these people to actually be a part of this change? All of that becomes so critical and important that we often skip, like I said a little bit earlier as well, which is extremely important.
Well said. I'm going to wrap us up here. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. Jeff, let me throw it to you one last time before we close. Is there anything you'd like to shine a light on? Anything we haven't talked about today? Maybe that's something you're working on, something you're passionate about, or a topic that we've not discussed that you think deserves more attention.
I actually, we touched on it a bit. The thing that I personally right now find the most exciting is this pace of technology change, the pace of that change is going to allow us to do things differently in the future. And frankly, that consumers, customers of any type will begin to shape and change their expectations because of it. They will expect things to be much faster than they were in the past and to be much more accurate than they were in the past. I find that super exciting. I find the dialogue fun. I also a little bit fearful of it once in a while, which is probably smart. From that perspective. And I would encourage anyone that wants to engage in that kind of a conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have some conversations there because I'm sure I can learn plenty from lots of people that see this as well.
You clearly have lots to share. Sujay, any closing thoughts from you, my friend, or where can we find you online?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, finding online is the easy thing these days. So much so that in fact it's difficult to hide online. You you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Very very excited to have this conversation with you, Jeff, and some of the thought provoking points that you brought together. I share this passion of how technology is changing the world and what we will do, and often get asked about this question around the pace at which things are happening, what will happen to the job market, what will happen to the employment. I was literally had like a labor reporting media executive reach out to me yesterday and talking about like what will happen to the job market, what will happen to the computer science engineers who are coming out and things like that. So much of things that are changing, and my own opinion every quarter is changing, like what I was saying earlier as well, like around how at the pace. So it's exciting paths exciting things that we are seeing across. Thank you so much, Len, and thanks, Mark. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming onto the show. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic conversation. Jeff, Sujay, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for the thoughtful insight. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Take care.
It has absolutely been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much.